Hi, welcome to another episode of Why Didn't They Laugh? Very exciting episode today. I'm going to try something a little different. I had a really quality, just nice bomb on a joke topic I tried in Los Angeles, and it sent me down a path where I wanted to learn more things about this topic. And that's what this podcast is all about. So I embraced that. And I actually have audio of things that I learned from this whole process. First off, I'd like to thank everyone that came to my LA show at the Improv and my New York shows at Gotham. That was a blast. I'm off the road for a while. Amy and I and Walter and the dogs, we're doing a cross-country journey soon to go back to Saranac Lake, where my brother's about to have his third baby. And we got a house and we're gonna fix it up. And we're talking today about trying to build a sauna ourselves, which would be awesome. But anyway, let's start things off and then just go down this fun little situation. Here is me trying out something that I thought was gonna work, and I realized it wasn't working and I just kept going. But check it out.
I started thinking about it. It's almost like Google is like religion now. That's where you go to ask all your deep questions. So I did this literally today, right before I came here. I went on a spiritual journey. I have to read it because there's a lot of facts here. So I go on Google, and the first thing I type is, what do I want? That's something you would ask a priest or a rabbi or a parent, family member, someone close to you. But now people ask these things to the Google machine. I said, what do I want? The first article is Forbes, a surefire plan to get what you really want. Solid article, mostly about, communities, building communities, goals and shit. But on the side of every page, it said, the all-new RX Hybrid by Lexus. There's also an ad that popped up with sound for Legos. So apparently what Google God is telling me that I want an overpriced Toyota and plastic squares. I typed in, who loves me? So, you want to know that. It's like, who loves me? Okay? So I typed in, who loves me? And it went to a survey for me to take, and then told me I should buy a car from Cars Direct. It took over my whole screen and told me I had to look at it for 30 seconds before it went away. During that time, as I thought about who loves me, I learned about an all-new 2016 Fiat crossover that looks like it was designed by an aggressively gay dwarf. After the 30 seconds, true story, I hit the X and it popped back up again to tell me about the Dodge Charger, which is a great car if you sell steroids to high school kids in the 1980s. I don't know, but it's true. It never told me who loves me. So then I typed in, am I okay? Because it's not, well, I just like doing new shit at shows. And this is interesting. I know it's not the funniest thing, but it's pretty profound. We're going to go down this little rabbit hole together. Am I okay? It took me to yet another page. The basic gist is if my interests are changing, my concentration is changing, changes in relationships, do I think strange things are happening to me, and is the world a confusing place, I'm moments away from a full meltdown. And that also means you are a living, breathing human. No, you don't remember what I said a second ago? It's all good. It then gave me guidance and tried to sell me car insurance. So then I typed in, am I pretty? This is when it got really fucking funny. Am I pretty? It took me to another quiz, and it suggested I stay at the Ritz-Carlton down the street from my home at Hotel.com. And then it asked me, what's my hair color, my eye color, do I have high cheekbones? It told me about Central Silver. What does my lips look like? What's my body shape? And I answered it as a 6'7", 35-year-old man. And it told me that I'm very pretty, I'm gorgeous. And then it told me I should enter a top model contest, which could pay $10,000. Okay, I then...
So you get where I'm going with this. I was getting a little nervous. I mean, there's more. I keep going. I do the full bit, but I'm like, my hand was almost starting to shake a little because I'm not used to. I mean, some of those I thought were going to be big punchlines and they weren't, and I'm like, but I just kept going. Okay, I came up with this idea because everyone always says to Google it. Just Google it. Even about topics that are subjective. I'm not talking about like, how do I get to the airport, but just like, like recently when Britain just left the EU, all these people are like, it's bad. I'm like, explain to me why. And they're like, just Google it. And I was like, well, who is Google? Like, who is this Google? For so many centuries, people would have elders or religious leaders or just people in their life that gave them guidance to questions like, who are we? What is the meaning of life? All these things. And now we don't really have that in American culture. Some people have religion, but science is kind of disproved enough where, you kind of go to church to sing and hug people and maybe believe in the narrative. And this worries me. Now, it doesn't worry me. I'm an advocate of science. I love science. But people are flawed. And that's the thing. Like, we have this perception of Google like it's infallible. And it's made by people. I heard a Malcolm Gladwell podcast recently about analyzing data in the Vietnam War. And one of the things he showed was the same data would be analyzed completely different by two different people based on their history. So I started looking up more stuff about this. And this is a dude who is doing a TED Talk, Eli Pariser's. He was talking about data bubbles. Here's I just did a couple clips to show you what I'm talking about.
I'm progressive politically, big surprise, but I've always, gone out of my way to meet conservatives. I like hearing what they're thinking about. I like seeing what they link to. I like learning a thing or two. And so I was kind of surprised when I noticed one day that the conservatives had disappeared from my Facebook feed. And what it turned out was going on was that Facebook was looking at which links I clicked on. And it was noticing that actually I was clicking more on my liberal friends' links than on my conservative friends' links. And without consulting me about it, it had edited them out. They disappeared. So Facebook isn't the only place that's doing this kind of invisible algorithmic editing of the web. Google's doing it too. If I search for something and you search for something, even right now at the very same time, we may get very different search results. Even if you're logged out, one engineer told me, there are 57 signals that Google looks at. Everything from what kind of computer you're on, to what kind of browser you're using, to where you're located, that it uses to personally tailor your query results. Think about it for a second. There is no standard Google anymore.
Okay, part of that is really cool because you get to have a world that's tailored to you and your needs, but the problem is who is doing the deciding of who you are. Like, this man, for example, started not seeing people he disagreed with because he clicks on other liberal friends. I have the opposite problem. I will search out people that I disagree with just to read what they're saying. And so if you look at my timeline, it looks like the opposite of what I believe in, because my personality trait is I like to dive in to things that I don't understand. But if my instinct says one thing, I'm like, okay, I gotta check out the other side. So then it would start feeding me the other side. But I think I don't like comfort as much as a lot of people. But this is when it starts getting bad, is when it starts getting into news. Check this out.
The biggest news site on the internet is now personalized. Different people get different things. Huffington Post, Washington Post, New York Times, all flirting with personalization in various ways. And where this moves us very quickly toward a world in which the internet is showing us what it thinks we want to see, but not necessarily what we need to see. As Eric Schmidt said, it'll be very hard for people to watch or consume something that has not, in some sense, been tailored for them.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of looking at news and looking at social media is to understand a different side to your opinion. And because from the top, this whole episode, it's way better for you, the listener, and for me to assume humans are good. That's important. Don't go into this thinking your side will be proven right or wrong, because this whole episode is not about issues or politics or anything like that. It's about It's about a tailor-made world and what that does to us. I'm sure a lot of us have noticed on all sides of all issues that people are starting to become more and more bold and more entitled and more fierce with their opinions. And on first glance, you can think the world's going to hell and think, oh, people are becoming terrible. No, people are becoming unaware of other opinions. People, let's just say I'm not going to use any real issues because I want to keep this as emotionally neutral as possible. Let's say there is a proposition to have more apples than oranges in a supermarket, and you want more apples. So you start clicking on all the articles that want more apples. And before you know it, the only thing you see are articles about more apples. And so you start thinking, why is it still equal with oranges? Everyone knows that apples are better. Look at my timeline, look at my news, look at CNN. All the articles are telling me that everyone agrees with me. When in fact, that's an algorithm. And that there's a lot of orange people out there that don't. And if you saw how many of them there were and how many of them you knew and their side, you probably wouldn't be as aggressive about it. And this is myself included. And this is the last little clip by Eli. I just really enjoyed this guy.
There were these gatekeepers, the editors, and they controlled the flows of information. And along came the internet, and it swept them out of the way, and it allowed all of us to connect together, and it was awesome. But that's not actually what's happening right now. What we're seeing is more of a passing of the torch from human gatekeepers to algorithmic ones. And the thing is that the algorithms don't yet have the kind of embedded ethics that the editors did. So if algorithms are going to curate the world for us, if they're going to decide what we get to see and what we don't get to see, then we need to make sure that they're not just keyed to relevance. We need to make sure that they also show us things that are uncomfortable.
That's a wonderful phrase. They have to show us things that are uncomfortable. And the world is getting very touchy with racism, sexism, all that stuff. And part of me wants to know why. Like, why now? Why, when things are going better than they ever have, are people getting so pissed off? And there's a few reasons. One, people have to do better in order to have a revolution. Like, when people are truly, truly oppressed, they have to think of their lower Maslow's hierarchy of needs first before they can seek true freedom or whatnot. And then so when they start doing a little better, then they can ask for more. But I believe the world has gotten unbelievably sexist and racist online with advertising. And this is almost a visceral response to this invisible thing that we all feel all the time and can't put our finger on. So I started looking up YouTube videos from just people trying to help you understand online marketing and targeting. And just notice some of the info they're giving us.
Here's how to set up these different targeting options for your YouTube ads.
Log into your Google AdWords account, go down to all video campaigns. I'm going to select this test 2 campaign, go to settings, click targets, and scroll down. I've got a couple of targeting groups here already, but I want to make a new targeting group, so I go to the plus sign, click on that, name the targeting group, so I've got targeting group 3. You can do a maximum cost per view, so in this case I'll do 6 cents.
Okay, you get that. They're not using direct language in that, but targeting groups are race, gender, income, what kind of computer you use. This is what they target for everything. And the feedback loop is so strong that it's pretty dehumanizing for people. And this is our world now. And I'm not against it. It's the information age. It's wonderful, but it's also not as cut and dry as people think. Here's another one of these little targeting things.
Hello, my name is Brian McCarthy. Welcome to an online lecture on segmentation and targeting. In this short video, we will talk about the broad perspective on marketing, market segmentation, target markets, and customer profiles and personas.
Now we're starting to get into culture or customer personas. That means you take their gender, race, where they live, political affiliation, how much money they make, how many friends they have, how many people tag them in photos, and you start creating a person to sell stuff to. And now we're starting to see where my original joke went wrong, because I don't know, maybe it's just not really comedy per se. I did have punchlines in there, but it's just too raw and too, I don't know, it's just creepy. When you start looking into Google or looking into Facebook and asking it questions, like it really knows things, and you realize it's only giving you what it thinks you already want to know. It's almost like seeking your approval. Here's the last one. This is actually, I think, someone from Google.
Hi, I'm Hal Varian. I'm the chief economist here at Google. Google uses an auction system to rank the ads that appear in the search results page and to determine the cost for each ad click. In this talk, I'll take you through a general overview of how the ad auction works. First and foremost, Google users want ads they see to be relevant. They don't want to be bothered with ads that aren't closely related to what they're searching for. And advertisers want to show relevant ads so users will actually click on them. Meantime, Google wants to provide a good experience for users and a good value to advertisers so they come back and use their services again in the future. Now, I'd like to walk you through what a traditional auction looks like. Say we have 4 advertisers competing for space on the search results page, and each has indicated a different amount they're willing to pay for a user to click their ad and visit their website.
I mean, this is so intense. All right, check out this one.
Well, it is the way it is. You see what you see on screens large and small. You see what you see in magazines. You hear on the radio what you hear because of a series of assumptions that have been made about demographic categories that are considered highly valuable, because not all demographic categories have value. The 18 to 49 has been the prized demographic ever since the 1960s. It has a huge impact on American media ever since then. But, as you've probably noticed, the baby boomers have aged out of 18 to 49. But it's still the case that Nielsen, the powerful ratings agency, still doesn't report ratings for people over 54. So in the media landscape, basically, they don't really exist. And advertisers pressure media to deliver to them the most difficult demographic out there, young males.
Yeah, I mean, she's making a point about how a lot of these things are reinforced to us by the ads that are being sent to us. Check this out.
The media industries tend to use these very rigid categories derived from classic demographics in order to understand their audiences. These very restrictive labels are meant to help them understand who we are and how we tick. And it's all based on the color of our skin, how much money we make, our gender, how old we are, how much education we have.
Okay, have you noticed lately that people just openly rip on old people in the news? You know, old white people ruin another vote. Oh, these old people gotta go. It's all driven by advertising, all of it. And even right now, there's a chance you're like, yeah, but they're so stupid. They're stupid according to people trying to sell shit. Everything's based on money, everything. Okay, my question is, when I was originally doing that Google search thing, how did, like, who am I? What is a human? Like, why am I on this earth? How did that have to do with a Dodge Charger? When he talks about word auctions, like, certain words are valuable. And a lot of the most valuable words have to do with depression because they want to sell you something weak. And when I say they, I don't mean Google and Facebook. I'm not demonizing these corporations. A lot of them are amazing. Apple, amazing. In fact, I'm surprised at how little they corrupt their own power with the amount of data they have in the world. Unlike the government that is really bad with corruption when it comes to data. And I'll get to that in a second. But I'll give you an example of quote unquote sexism in commercials. These algorithms and these companies don't care about sexism, either direction of it. They don't care about dehumanizing. The whole point is to sell you something. And when they've identified a market they want to sell something to, They just roll. Okay, here is a tire commercial from the 60s. Notice how sexist it is against women. Check this out.
Depending on how you drive and your car's condition, you can get incredible mileage from the Goodyear Custom Wide Tread Polyglass tire.
I've got 32,000 miles on my tires.
I've got 41,000 miles on my Polyglass. But Polyglass means more than mileage when your wife has to drive alone. When a woman's at the wheel, Polyglass means more than mileage.
Okay, but now let's say they switch who they want to sell to. Now they want to sell to women. So they're going to now make guys look like idiots. Check this out.
I don't know about you, but I live with a bunch of animals. My kids are pigs, and my husband is
Vegas is incredible. There's a casino in every hotel.
Oh, yeah?
And the people are so nice. Today, I learned how to double down.
Wow.
Yeah, they even comp my room because I'm down $5,800.
$5,800?
$5,800 chips.
$5,800.
$5,800 chips.
Keep your unused minutes for when you really need them with Rollover, only from AT&T. Now buy this Nokia and get one free.
Okay, go, 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 go. Come on, you all adults here, boy? Yeah. When you get Rob, come on. Reach for your dream, bro. Reach for the stars.
And I'm not trying to say these brands are sexist. All I'm saying is because I don't even know what sexist means. All it is who you're marketing to. It's the Google God. So I read this book called Data and Goliath. And the dude, I found him, it's an unbelievably intense and terrifying and exciting book. But things are changing so quickly that a lot of people don't understand that a lot of laws in place and a lot of mentalities are for an older regime that is disappearing quickly. Okay, this is him talking about data collection.
Writing about how these transaction records are generated, how they are increasingly stored, and increasingly used, saved, bought, and sold by different companies. I look at Google, I look at license plate capture, I look at different systems that follow you around on the internet, cameras, all of these technologies of collection, which I think have been well talked about in the media. What's talked about less are systems of analysis. The media likes to focus on collecting this, collecting that, spends less time on analysis. I think one of the common misconceptions I find talking to people is they have very human views of analysis, that people are looking at it, or people-like entities. So you can hide in a sea of big data. Right? If you've got thousands or millions of records, they'll never find you. Right? There isn't this conception that computers are really good at incredibly boring, time-consuming, repetitive tasks. Right? And the intuition of how this data can be used, how things can be correlated, doesn't apply anymore. And I'm reminded, this is only related, of the programs that would take shredded paper and reassemble the documents, basically by brute force. Laying them all flat, and taking a photograph and moving the parts around until you got, it's basically a puzzle. Right? But it's a puzzle that a human being could never solve. And so just like paper shredders are designed for a human adversary, not really a computer adversary, right? Our notions of data and and what happens to our data is conceptualized mostly based on human adversaries. So I talk a lot about this. I talk about the data being surveillance data. And I think this is a problem, another problem in the popular conception, the notion that it's only metadata. You heard President Obama say that a year and change ago. Right? And metadata is fundamentally surveillance data. To me, the way to think of it is just do a thought experiment. Imagine I hired a private detective to spy on that guy. Right? And the detective would put a bug in your home, in your office, in your car, and I'd get a report of the conversations he had. Right? That's the data. That's the kind of thing President Obama says is not being captured for all Americans. Right now, I imagine I took the same detective and said, put this guy under surveillance. I would get a different report. I get a report of where he went, who he spoke to, what he did. Right? That's all the metadata. Right? The metadata is the surveillance data, and it's surprisingly intimate. Right? Metadata speaks to our relationships, our associations, what we're interested in, what's important to us. It's really who we are.
Fascinating. This is something I really wanted to share because the rhetoric is always, well, if you don't have anything to hide, why hide? People don't understand that evolution is based on change. And if you're we now have more surveillance on us than any East German citizen did during the Cold War at all times. And that's a fact. And because he explains it better, but listen to why there needs to be privacy. Even if you're not hiding anything scary or evil or messed up, who is like whatever government is in place is not the jury, judge, and executioner of what your privacy should mean. Listen to this.
Why privacy matters, why data matters. And I head-on attack, the two tropes you'll hear in common discussion about this. And the first one is security versus privacy, and the second is if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. And those are the two main talking points you'll hear out in the common world. As security versus privacy, I think that's obviously not true. Whenever someone says security versus privacy, look at them and say door lock, burglar alarm, tall fence. There's a lot of security that has nothing to do with privacy. And also, you don't actually feel secure when your privacy is violated. This notion that they don't go hand in hand, I think this doesn't make any sense, that privacy is a part of security. To be sure, there are aspects of security that require privacy violation, right? Police investigating crimes. And we have lots of systems in place to ensure that that process happens fairly with minimal abuse. And I talk a lot about them. So the nothing to hide, nothing to fear argument, that mischaracterizes privacy as something to hide. I think privacy is much more about autonomy and power and control. Privacy is my ability to decide how I present myself to the world.
This dude is so fascinating. I originally heard from him on a TED Talk, and then I got his book and went from there. Okay, I got to show you something that's really, really, really cool. Where is it? So one misconception of people is that everything is revolutionary and new and, wow, did you hear what this person said? And I can't believe how daring this is or whatnot. Let me show you some clips. This is, what is this? Oh, this is Leonardo DiCaprio's Oscar acceptance speech this year.
And all the indigenous communities around the world. It is time that we recognize your history and that we protect your indigenous lands from corporate interests and people that are out there to exploit them. It is time that we heard your voice and protected this planet for future generations. Thank you very much.
Okay, so brave. This is Marlon Brando's acceptance speech from the early 70s for The Godfather.
Marlon Brando in The Godfather.
Accepting the award for Marlon Brando and The Godfather, Miss Shasheen Littlefeather.
Hello, my name is Shasheen Littlefeather. I'm Apache, and I'm president of the National Native American Affirmative Image Committee. I'm representing Marlon Brando this evening, and he has asked me to tell you in a very long speech, which I cannot share with you presently because of time, but I will be glad to share with the press afterwards that he very regretfully cannot accept this very generous award. And the reasons for this being are the treatment of American Indians today by the film industry.
Yeah, he even won up DiCaprio. He had an actual Native American accept the award. Between that award and DiCaprio, I'm pretty sure nothing changed. Here is Eddie Murphy complaining about being at the end of the Oscars in the early 80s.
I said, I'm not going because they haven't recognized black people in the motion picture. And he said, what are you talking about? Black people won Oscars. But black people will not ride the caboose of society, and we will not bring up the rear anymore. I want you to recognize us. He said, well, fine, it's done. I said, now, when do I have to be there? He said, well, you don't have to get there till about 9 or 10 because it's the last award of the evening. So...
Okay, here is this year Chris Rock, who is now first at the Oscars.
Well, I'm here at the Academy Awards, otherwise known as the White People's Choice Awards. You realize if they nominated host, I wouldn't even get this job. So y'all be watching Neil Patrick Harris right now.
And bear in mind, these men they're no strangers to saying very offensive things to other demographics. So it's not me as white man making fun of black man. Listen to some classic Eddie Murphy comedy.
I did jokes about homosexuals about a couple years ago, and faggots were mad. They were like, it's nothing like having a nation of fags looking for you. I'd be at parties, there's always 2 or 3 homosexuals at a party, and they'd be standing around looking at you. They'd be looking and everything. And the cars would come rushing across town, be woo, 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 woo. And there won't be no siren, it'll be a real fag sitting on the roof going, woo, 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 woo. Woo! Pull over, pull over.
Yeah, so it wasn't exactly the Dalai Lama wondering why he's going last. Everybody has problems. Okay, like even Chris Rock, I love him. Such a good comic. But check this one out.
I got in the elevator, right? I'm getting in the elevator, and these 2 high school white boys tried to get on with me. And I just dove off. I said, y'all ain't killing me. I am scared of young white boys. If you white and under 21, I am running for the hills.
I mean, that's hysterical. So this is that British thing, Brexit. It's almost like an Angelina Jolie baby or a celebrity couple. People made Brexit immediately. Brexit is a fascinating look at what is happening right now in the world because it isn't good, bad, red, blue, right, wrong, left, right. It isn't this binary world that you're given. I'm going to take a minute and try to explain what I believe is the conflict right now in the world. It's the way you see the world. For most of the history of humans, it was a 2-dimensional view. And that was great. It worked very well. You had my land, your land. It was like a map. And this was awesome when people could only travel 8 miles an hour max, and you died statistically, it was, 98% that you died within 20 miles of where you were born. That's most of human existence. And then the Industrial Revolution kicked in, and we had to start looking at the world in 3 dimensions, which is volume, the air around us. Because of, let's say you're pumping soot into the air, and that air goes over to someone else's land, now you have a problem. Because it's the same with issue with global warming or with any of these global issues. You can't look at it from 2 dimensions anymore. It has to be 3 dimensions because the volume of air, and there's so many people now that the entire globe has different issues and problems than your little piece of land does. And again, it isn't good or bad, it just is. And then the 4th dimension is time, the passage of time. And then the 5th dimension is where everything is coming from now. And that is the role of multinational corporations. Let me explain. Let's say there's one person in Canada and one person in America, and they both are using Gmail. Now they're linked instantly. If you take that same map and fold it and poke a hole through it, Canada is now touching America. And you can do that with any points on the entire globe. They can be touched without any passage of time or space. No space time. It's just like a wormhole. And these are now linked by multinational corporations. Do you use Verizon? Do you use AT&T? Do you use Apple? Do you use Android or iPhone or Twitter? Now there's an instantaneous connection between people that has nothing to do with space-time. That is where everything is, okay? Because think about the rhetoric of England leaving the EU or Trump building his wall between America and Mexico. Those are policies in a two-dimensional world. And they're not evil. They're not bad if that's how you think. If you think that you can secure borders with a physical barrier, with laws, with like saying you're there and we're here, that's two-dimensional. But then the fifth dimension is the less national, the less national borders you have, the more commerce can flow. Where that's why people were getting so upset about England leaving the EU and why the Dow Jones tanked and all these things happen, is because it limits trade. It limits workers. It limits people going from A to B and being able to be part of a bigger unit that allows them to trade in the fifth dimension. Same with the wall with Mexico. You could throw up a wall, and does that limit the influence of Mexican culture on American culture and vice versa? Of course not. A firewall is a more effective wall than a physical wall in the fifth dimensional universe. Now, this is when things start being hazy and fuzzy, and you can't really determine, yes, this is right, you're wrong, this is right, you're wrong, because the fifth dimensional world is brand new for people. No one knows what will happen. And I hear a lot of people say, the nation state is the cause of war. So if we get rid of nation states and xenophobia and bigotry and you are you and I am I, we'll get rid of war. The problem is we'll never do that. All that changes are the demographics of what you consider us and them. I'm from a little town in Oswego, New York, where we didn't have anyone that was not white. So what do? We split up white people. There's Irish, Italians, Germans, couple Greeks, some Jews, and it became tribal. I was raised thinking like Irish people were drunks and Italians all gambled. You can divide people. And then I lived in Los Angeles and people keep saying white people. I'm like, which white people? Try and tell, when someone says Asian American, try and tell a Japanese person that they're just like a Chinese person. Good luck with that. Try and tell a Mexican they're just like a Guatemalan. The bigger the group, it just changes what is tribal. And I think that what could happen in the fifth dimensional reality is you can almost see that down the line, we may become citizens of corporations. And that what links you isn't space or ethnicity or gender. It's what affiliation you have with one of these data kings and queens. Because right now, Amazon sells you stuff, and Google is a search, and AT&T is a wireless provider, and all these different things. But the real game is data collection. And I think when all the dust settles, we'll see that there will be these kingdoms of data, and we will be serfs to each of the kingdoms. And then from there, you can go right back into war without missing a beat. So, do I think we should build a wall between America and Mexico? No, I don't. But don't think that it's that obvious and that the hubris of thinking that you know what someone else, that you know you're better than someone else because of whatever you've been fed to online. You can have your PhD from BuzzFeed University or be a Huffington Post scholar and you don't know shit. You don't know jack shit. I study this stuff hours a day and I don't know shit. So when I see the arrogance of this, where it's like, oh, xenophobia. No, what it is, it's a not understanding the fifth dimensional world. And one of the reasons why people don't like old people in marketing is because they don't like change. And young people have been pushed and prodded and advertised that change is always good. Change, hope and change, hope and change, hope and change. Can be good, can be bad. What if you change into something bad? Another thing that we've been pushed that it isn't possible is that every year there's growth. That can't happen. Every year you can't have growth, or else you will start a Ponzi scheme. It's called a pyramid scheme. When you have to have growth to maintain what you are, you no longer are an honest government or an honest corporation. And this all came from that one joke not working. I won't have episodes this heavy this often, but this was really fun to do. And I think that this is something that I hope you pass to your friends and family. And because I'm not saying what is right or wrong. I'm not saying you're stupid if you think this, or you're smart if you think that. Like, for example, look at the difference between country music and emo rock or whatever. I love middle America country music, and I love the people because of their soul and their heart and their kindness and their goodness. But every now and then you can see a flaw in them, and that's based on education of other people. You know, it's like, I love my car, I love my woman, what else do I need except to get rid of the gays? And you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But they're happy people, a lot of them, very happy. And then you'll see these very, very cognitive guys or women that like know the history of everything but are miserable. And they don't help each other and they don't appreciate their lives, but they know that gay people are not evil, for example. And I think that's the clash. And whatever side you're on, just know that the other side isn't even an other side. It's invented to sell you Dodge Chargers. So subscribe to the podcast, rate it, write a comment, email me, whydidn'ttheylaugh@gmail.com. Of course, always go to hugepianist.com for future tour dates. We're selling bibs. We're making milk zombie bibs, my wife and I. And again, thank you for listening. This has been a really fun episode, and let me know if you like this format. Much love. Later. I'll just end it. So it turns out, am I asking Google God all these questions? Did I need a Lexus and Legos, a shitty book, I should fly to Liberia, enter a beauty contest regardless of how I look? Get cheek tone blush, I may in fact be a mermaid. I'm moments away from a meltdown, and I should be staying down the street at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. That is fucking madness.